The International Monetary Fund and the World Bank were set up after World War II to help countries going through economic crises. However, they've been used for anything but. In the 80s, the fund and the bank were weaponized. They forced leaders of Sub-Saharan Africa to adhere to the strictest form of capitalism, known as neoliberalism.
And those World Bank lenders were also very clear that they wanted changes and cuts in your expenditures in education and healthcare and housing and all the sorts of things that small countries with aspiring populations and developmental plans really counted on. And suddenly the 80s and 90s were the lost decades.
This meant selling off state assets, cutting spending on education and healthcare, cutting taxes on multinational corporations, overtaxing the poor, and focusing solely on export-led growth. In exchange, African leaders were offered millions of dollars worth of loans, shackling countries into debt. As a result, poverty in Africa almost doubled in the 80s and 90s. Leaders who did not go along with these programs were quickly removed.
L'Afrique, à nouveau secouée par le démon du coup d'État. La nouvelle a été confirmée ce matin à Ouagadougou. Thomas Sankara, ancien chef d'État du Burkina Faso, l'ancienne Haute-Volta, a été tué hier lors de l'attaque du palais présidentiel.
Yet multinational corporations thrived during this period, leading most to question who this system was made to benefit. And then riots began popping up all around the world. These later became known as the IMF riots. The programs were an obvious failure. Yet, 30 years later, the IMF and the World Bank are still hawking the same medicine, forcing Africa into a cycle of debt and poverty that it is yet to escape.
But when you look at what had happened on this continent from 1973 to 2023, if I had wreaked that kind of havoc or any kind of havoc on a country or a community, I would not dare show my face.
This is most apparent in countries like Kenya, where the government is gutting social spending, overtaxing the poor, and removing subsidies on food and fuel, all at the behest of the IMF.
What I can just say the government is doing is just tax. It's overtaxing people.
The government and the people living in the slums, they're in different countries.
We said it here that you put your boots where your hands can reach. For you to eat, there are some things you have to cut so that you can sustain your family.
And just like before, massive riots followed.
We are following breaking news out of Kenya. A demonstration by people angry over planned tax hikes has turned deadly.
Protests are ongoing in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Medics there say several people have been shot dead by police.
More than 50 people have been killed and dozens abducted, with hundreds arrested during recent anti-government protests.
The only government they know is policemen, law enforcers, only.
Kenya is a sovereign state. We should be left to run and manage our affairs independently.
How are you not enslaved? How are you not recolonized by these lending agencies and institutions and countries?